Now, the toll of coronavirus on the world's biggest economy has been immense. Latest job figures out of the US show another 3.2 million Americans have filed for unemployment benefit this week. So this means that 33 million people, that's 1 in 5 workers in America, have lost their jobs since the lockdown brought the US economy to a standstill 7 weeks ago. It's a massive turn in events. 2 months ago, America was boasting an unemployment rate of only 3.5%, its lowest in 30 years. Economists fear that that figure could reach 15% or even higher. The question has turned to this. Top US economist Mohamed El-Erian tweets, how quickly do the unemployed get jobs? How many drop out of the labour force? What happens to hourly earnings? Well, let's touch upon some of that with Catty Kay, who joins us live from Washington. And Catty, the fact that despite these recent reopenings that we're seeing across the United States, the number of people collecting benefits continue to rise. So it feels like people are just simply not returning back to the workforce.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going to get the unemployment figures for the month of April, and the speculation, as you suggest, is it's going to be up at 15%. That's similar to the Great Depression of the 1920s, Kasham. It's a huge blow to the American economy. And what's happening is, you're right, states are opening around the country. About half of American states are now starting to reopen businesses. But all of the indications so far from states that opened a couple of weeks ago is that consumers aren't going back to businesses. So the governments in those states are saying, we think it's safe for you to start opening, with all of the restrictions, of course, but consumers are saying we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe going to restaurants or hairdressers or nail salons. And so people aren't starting to generate income, and therefore people aren't being employed again. What's interesting is that a poll has come out in the last couple of days suggesting that most American workers who have been laid off do feel that they have a strong chance of being rehired once the country is fully open again. That gets to this idea of, is this a V-shaped recovery? Was there a precipitous drop and then a precipitous climb back up again in the economy? That's what the White House is hoping for. Quite a lot of public health experts and other economists and business leaders that I've been speaking to are a bit more sceptical about that.
Catty, stay right there, because I also want to touch upon another development coming from the United States. New research has linked infections in New York City before social distancing began to outbreaks across America. Now, experts at Yale tracked mutations of the virus, the history of infected people, and models of the outbreak, and they came up with this. New York was the primary source of new infections, taking the virus from the city to the southern states and even as far as the West Coast. And these New York Times graphics show more detail. The infections linked to New York City are those highlighted in red, while the viruses that spread from Washington, for example, are highlighted in yellow. And here are the outbreaks in the southern states. As you can see, every sample taken from Louisiana was related to New York. And here you have the northeastern states most linked to New York. So let's get Catty back. Catty, given the numbers in New York, no huge surprise, but it's a real eye-opener when it comes to the timings of social distancing being brought in.
Yeah, and also about how this virus spread from big cities, right? And we've seen this around the world. So Wuhan in China, Milan in Italy, they became the focus points from which then the rest of the country got infected. We thought initially this was going to be a virus that came into the United States from China via Washington state and then spread around the country. What this New York Times reporting shows us is that actually it came from China originally, of course, but then through Europe, and then European flights that came into New York City during the months of January, February, March. And then those people traveled all around the country from New York City, taking the virus with them. And the implication of this reporting is that by the time the president stopped those flights and people coming from Europe on March the 13th, by then, this report says, it was already too late. The virus was already in New York City and already traveling around the country. I think it's an interesting report also for policymakers to look at as the country starts reopening, because it's a reminder, of course, that this is a country of 50 states and people can move freely from one state to another. They took the virus freely from New York State to other states around the country. If we reopen and some places become a hotspot, then there is the risk, of course, that people can travel from one state across the border into another state quite freely without a passport, with no restrictions, and again take the virus around the country again.
Yes, the implications are huge. And Cassie, now, just moving away very briefly from coronavirus, the US Justice Department has just announced that it's dropping the case against President Trump's former security advisor, Michael Flynn. Now, Mr. Trump said that he is very happy for him. Cassie, remind us about this case.
Yeah, so the case of Michael Flynn was one of the biggest cases surrounding the Mueller investigation into whether the Trump campaign had unlawful contacts with Russia during the 2016 election campaign. And Michael Flynn had been having contacts with the Russian ambassador to the United States and with other Russian officials, and he didn't tell the White House about it, and he also lied to the FBI about it. In 2017, Mr. Flynn actually admitted lying to the FBI. He had been Donald Trump's national security advisor. He was fired as the national security advisor. He was caught up in the Mueller investigation. He admitted in 2017 that he lied to the FBI about his contacts with Russians during the campaign, and pleaded guilty to that. Even so, the Justice Department is saying that they feel that Mr. Flynn didn't really fully understand what the FBI was asking him, and that's why they've decided to drop this case. It seems quite political. General Flynn was a favorite of Donald Trump's. Donald Trump today saying that describing him as a warrior, and saying that he felt that he had been unwrongly charged in the first place. So a big win for the White House and for Donald Trump, and more of the politics of the Mueller investigation, which still rippling through the election process here in the States.
It feels like a different world ago. Cassie, as always, thank you so much. Cassie Kay there joining us live. Thanks for talking us through it.